Good day everyone. So today we'll be discussing the topic which is all about ASEAN Agreement on the Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources. So ASEAN is an abbreviation for the Associations of Southeast Asian Nations. The ASEAN Agreement on the Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources was concluded on July 9, 1985 in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. So unfortunately, this agreement has not been ratified by a sufficient number of member states to enter into force. So based on my research, so the reasons for the limited ratifications of the ASEAN Agreement on the Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources is due to the factors such as differing national priorities, resource allocations, and domestic policies may contribute to the slow ratification process. So some member states might face challenges in aligning their laws with the agreement provisions. So it's stated here that there are only 3 countries have ratified it. So one which is the Philippines, and the other is the Malaysia and Singapore. So the Philippines ratified it on September 4, 1986. So what is the objectives of this agreement, the ASEAN Agreement on the Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources? So it's stated here that the ASEAN Agreement on the Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources recognizes the importance of preserving the region's natural resources for present and future generations and their value to science, culture, society, and the economy. So, the ASEAN Agreement in this on the conservation of nature and natural resources is they stresses preserving natural resources for present and future generations. So, sa kuman ug sa umaabot na panahon. So, the agreement acknowledges the multifaceted value of these resources, encompassing their importance to scientific understanding. So, for example, by fostering the preservation of natural resources that enable the scientists to study ecosystem, biodiversity, and ecological processes over time, providing us valuable insights into the region's environmental dynamics. So wala da sab siya dili da sab siya makakontribute to in scientific understanding, but also contribute to the cultural heritage, social well-being, and economic sustainability. So the agreement aims to hold ASEAN signatory parties responsible to undertake individual and joint actions for the conservation and management of their living resources and other natural elements on which they depend on to ensure sustainability of development. So the foremost objective of the ASEAN agreement is to have the management of these resources assimilated into the environmental development planning of each signatory party country. So this means that participating nations commit to incorporating strategies for the sustainable use and preservation of their natural resources within their overall environmental development plans. So by doing so, para mahitabo ini, so the aim, so ang ilagay goal is to align conservation efforts with broader developmental goals, ensuring na para ma-ensure na ang pag-utilize or ang paggamit ng mga natural resources is balanced and there is sustainability. So, if yaoy balance and sustainability ng ato natural resources, so there is a long-term benefit of both the region and its individual member states. So kita is we are one of the member states. So kung kita mo gamit ang mga natural resources is responsible kita mo gamit is yaoy gayud maka-benefit gayud kita sa dili da sa kuman ug sa umaabot sab na panahon. So moving on, so let's proceed to the obligations of this agreement, which is the ASEAN Agreement on the Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources. So by the way, this agreement has 8 chapters and 35 articles, pero ang gikuan nga di ang gibutang da na chapter is 7 da siya kabuok. So pwede na nako siya i-send sa iyo and ini na ang ila whole gayud na statements about this agreement. So the first obligations of the Asean Agreement on the Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources is outlined in the Chapter 2, which is all about the conservation of species and ecosystem. So it focuses on the formulations of a plan and taking necessary measures to conserve and manage species and ecosystems with the objective of preserving genetic diversity, promoting sustainable use, protecting endangered and endemic species, preventing soil erosions and other forms of degradations, and conserving underground and surface water resources. So, one of the example of preserving genetic diversity and sustainable use is through the implementations of agroforestry practices. So, by planting a variety of tree species alongside agricultural crops, so this approach not only conserve genetic diversity but also promotes sustainable land use. So di ba kasahod sagad kita na ang mga kahoy or mga trees isa gyud sa na makatabang to help prevent soil erosions, enhance biodiversity, and contribute to water conservations, thus aligning with the agreement's objectives of protecting ecosystems and natural resources. So that is the first obligations of the ASEAN agreement that centers on the formulating plans and implementing measures to conserve and manage species and ecosystem, which is the main objectives is to preserve genetic diversity, promote sustainable use, protect endangered and endemic species, also to prevent soil erosions and to combat degradations and to conserve underground and surface water resources. So the next obligation is outlined in the Chapter 3 of the agreement that deals with the conservation of ecological processes, promoting environmentally sound practices to prevent environmental degradations, and establishing environmental quality monitoring programs to prevent pollutions. So, for example, in terms of preventing environmental degradations, the country might enforce regulations and guidelines for industries to adopt eco-friendly practices, reducing the risk of habitat destructions or the pollutions. So, amin sa isa ka example yon siya to promote to adopt the eco-friendly practices. So, di ba, here in the Philippines, so the government has implemented environmental policies and regulations to address issues such as pollutions, deforestations, and climate change by promoting eco-friendly practices and sustainable development. So yan pa another ways which is ang pag-recycle, to conserve water, use renewable energy, and plant more trees. So ini na mga ways, so isa yon siya na tabang to conserve our ecosystems or our environment. So the next obligations is outlined in Chapter 4 emphasizes the environmental planning measures that includes the proper use of land, establishment of protected areas, and implementing impact assessment systems and procedures, or undertaking impact assessment systems and procedures. So, an example of comprehensive environmental planning measures would be the development of a sustainable tourism project in a coastal region. So, for example, yun ang imo project is magtaod ka or maghimo ka ng sustainable tourism in a coastal regions. So, in order to have the proper use of land, so may imo gay dapat zoning. So, you have to designate a specific areas for tourism infrastructures, ensuring the responsible development without compromising sensitive ecosystems or habitats. So, imo gayud i-designate anyaw na specific na area or locations para sa imo tourism infrastructures na imo gayud sa i-ensure nimo na dili siya maka-harm sa mga sa environment or sa mga habitat na yaon sa nganha na specific locations or areas. So, for instance, So, hotels and recreational facilities could be located in designated zones while the critical habitats are preserved or not affected. Then, for the establishment of the protected areas, so, may magyapon mahitabo na designation. So, designate certain coastal zones or designate the coastal zones as marine reservoirs in order to protect the coral reefs and marine life. So, in order to protect the coral reefs and marine life, so implement strict regulations against destructive activities like overfishing or coral harvesting by using dynamite in these protected areas. So, di ba, mag-implement ka gayud ng mga regulations na against yan sa mga activities, destructive fishing activities, like mga overfishing, yung paggamit ng mga dynamite, kay isa gad yan siya na makaguba sa coral reefs or marine life na yaon sa ocean. So, man siya. Then, undertaking impact assessment system and procedure. So, di ba, kadumdum ka mo itong sa principle number 17, which is the environmental impact assessment. So, before initiating the tourism project, so mag-conduct kayo na ay nan thorough environmental impact assessment to assess the potential impacts on the environment. So, i-assess kayo na ay kung unigid potential na impact yaon o resulta sa environment. So, i-evaluate nimo ang mga factors such as yung changes in the water quality, kaya ang imo sagad kuan is tourism project or in a coastal region or in a coastal area. So, i-evaluate nimo ang changes in water quality, and disruption to wildlife, to amitong bilang gaina, and effects on local communities. So, by integrating these measures, so fostering a balance between tourism and environmental conservation. So then the next obligation is outlined in the chapter 5, concern itself with the national supporting measures such as promotion and support of scientific research and promotions of educations, information, public participations, and training programs. So it also touches on the matter of establishing of an administrative machinery necessary to implement the provisions of the agreement. So, for instance, so a country could allocate resources to fund scientific research on local biodiversity, so implement public education campaigns about conservation, then organize training programs for relevant stakeholders, and establish a specialized administrative body to oversee and enforce the agreement's provisions. So these measures collectively aim to enhance understanding, foster the public engagement, and ensure coordinated efforts toward the conservation of nature and natural resources. Then the next obligation also outlined in the chapter 6 that tackles the need for the international cooperation, or which is all about the international cooperations. So it's stated here that signatory parties to this agreement are required to undertake cooperative activities by collaborating with international organizations, exchanging scientific and technical data, and collaborating on monitoring activities. So an example is, for instance, so countries may engage in joint research projects with international conservation organizations to address transboundary environmental issues. So, di ba gayud, kung ang isa ka country mo cooperate sa international organization, so dako gadyan siya ang matabang in order to address the environmental issues. So, they could exchange data on migrating species, the climate patterns, or ecological trends, so fostering a collective understanding of regional conservation challenges. So, di ba, kung ako gilang gaina, so collaborating with international or organization allows for more comprehensive and innovative approaches to complex issues. So, international partnerships facilitate the sharing of knowledge, best practices, and technologies, so leading to accelerated progress and improved outcomes. So, this international cooperation enhances the effectiveness of conservation measures by leveraging combined expertise and resources for the benefit of the ASEAN region. And the last obligation is outlined in Chapter 7 that deals with the international supporting measures such as meeting of the contracting parties, establishment of the Secretariat, and setting up national agencies responsible for coordinations and communications between contracting parties and the Secretariat. So, the establishment of a Secretariat serves as a central administrative body facilitating communications and coordinations among the member nations. So, setting up a national agencies responsible for coordinations and communication enhances the implementations of the agreement at the domestic level. So, ensuring effective cooperations and information's exchange between the member countries and the central secretariat. So ang ining secretariat guys, so siya guys serves as a central administrative body facilitating communications and coordination. So siya ang mag-manage and improve and siya plays a key role in managing and improving communications and coordinations within a larger system. So moving on, so let's proceed to the convention bodies created. So it's stated here that the convention body created by this agreement is the ASEAN Working Group on Nature Conservation and Biodiversity, or the AWGNCP. So formerly the ASEAN Working Group on Nature Conservation. So the ASEAN Working Group on Nature Conservation and Biodiversity so works closely with the ASEAN Regional Center for Biodiversity Conservation, or the ARBC, and later on with the ASEAN Center for Biodiversity, or the ECB, in crafting management systems for biological conservation to maintain and promote the resources of the region. So this convention bodies created so plays a vital role in crafting and implementing management systems for biological conservations in the ASEAN region. So this collaborative effort so facilitates the exchange of expertise and resources, so ensuring a unified approach to preserving biodiversity and addressing the regional conservation challenges. So this work of the ASEAN Working Group on Nature Conservation and Biodiversity, so they are essential for promoting sustainable management of biological resources and maintaining the diverse natural heritage of the ASEAN region. So the next is the implementing legislation. So stated here that the Philippines, having signed and ratified the agreement, has incorporated the preservation and management of natural resources and adoptions of several environmental principles in some of its environmental laws. So this topic, the laws promulgated after the ratifications of the 1985 ASEAN Agreement on the Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources, will be discussed by co-reporter Miss Claire Luna.
Hello, for the continuation of the topic, I am Claire Luna, your next discussant. So my topic is all about the environmental laws that help strengthen the ASEAN Agreement on the Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources. So, environmental law works to protect land, air, water, and soil. So, implementing legislation. Implementing legislation means making the legislation go into effect. So these are activities, doings, or actions that support on the positive implementation for the conservation of nature and natural resources. So what is the importance of conservation and protection of the environment? So environmental conservation involves the protection, preservation, and restoration of ecosystems and natural resources. So it is essential for maintaining biodiversity, mitigating climate change, and ensuring the long-term well-being of both humans and the planet. So the first law that's supported on this agreement is the RA 7586, or the National Integrated Protected Areas Act of 1992, or the NIPAS Act. So what is RA 7586? So this act was enacted to establish integrated protected areas in recognition of the critical importance of protecting the country's diverse natural resources in the environment. So this reflects chapters 2 and 4, the ASEAN Agreement on the Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources. So the implementing bodies of this Republic Act are the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, the DNR. So and Protected Areas and Wildlife Bureau and Protected Area and Management Board. So the implementing rules and regulations for this Republic Act is the DNR Administrative Order number 25 series of 1992. So this act was approved on June 1, 1992. So Inisia, or this act, the RA 7586, tackles about the biodiversity conservation. So this law provides the legal and developmental framework for the establishment of protection areas and management. So, the basic principle of NIPAS Act is to protect and preserve the native plants and animals for general, and focusing on the conservation of the biological diversity and sustainable development. So, so the categories of management zone of NIPAS Act is the strict protection zone. So it refers close to all human activities except for scientific studies and or ceremonial or religious used by ICCs or IPEs. So ICCs, ang manisiya ang mga indigenous cultural communities, and then the IP is the indigenous people. And then, next, the buffer zone. So, it refers to the protection of protected areas, PA, from activities that will directly and indirectly will cause harm to protected areas. So, what are the main purpose of establishment of protected areas? So, protected areas provide for life essentials. They protect natural resources that are critical to many people on Earth. Prohibited within protected areas amoyan siyang paghunting, destroying, disturbing, or mere possession of any plants or animals or products derived therefrom without a permit from the management board. And then second is and then next is dumping of any waste products detrimental to the protected area or the plants and animals or inhabitants therein. And then next is use of any motorized equipment without permit from the management board. This act was all about lang sa kainan about sa biodiversity conservation. Then the penalties in this act is 5,000 to 500k. So next is the RA 8550. So the Philippine Fisheries Code of 1998. So kung ang RA 7586 gatakil siya sa biodiversity conservation, ang RA 8550 it's all about conservation of the fisheries and aquatic resources. So, towards sustainable fishery management. So, this Republic Act was enacted by Congress to protect and conserve the fishing grounds in the country. Its objective is to achieve food security by limiting access to the fishery. So, it was approved on February 25, 1998 Again, ang una po itong RA 7550 kasi approve. Okay, approve siya itong June 1, 1992, and then the RA 8550 is on February 25, 1998. So it was approved by President Fidel V. Ramos. So law protected PD 704, 1975. So RA 8550 is conservation of fisheries and aquatic resources towards sustainable fishery management. So, manage the country's aquatic and marine resources from further destruction. So, IUU, fishing. So, IUU stands for illegal, unregulated, and unreported fishing. So, threatens effective management and conservation of the resources without permit or license. So, the government agency responsible is the BFAR or Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources. So, the next law that helps strengthen on this agreement is the RA 8749 or the Philippine Clean Air Act of 1992. So this act was approved on June 23, 1999 under the administration of Joseph Estrada. So polluters must pay. No? Polluters must pay. So this Republic Act promotes the need for clean habitat and environment by providing for an integrated air quality improvement framework. So this framework is designed to put into action and management and control program aimed at reducing emissions and prevent air pollution. So, ang RA 7550 is nagtakil siya sa biodiversity conservation, and then the RA 8550, it's all about sa conservation of fisheries and aquatic resources. Ang RA 8749 is nagtakil siya sa Philippine Air Act, sa Philippine sa about sa clean air. So, this act are an act providing for a comprehensive air pollution control policy and for other purposes. So, the law adheres to the constitutional right of people to balance a healthful ecology in accord with the rhythm and harmony of nature. So, dapat ginatubuhat nga ni is ang pag-stop ng wrong waste disposal or the burning garbage. So, the agencies that supported this act is the DT or the Department of Transportation, the DepEd, CHED, DTI, Department of Science and Technology or the DOST, the DA, the Department of Energy, the DILG, FEBOX, and the PIA. So, a better future, a clean country, citizens, and are a healthy, responsible, united. So, polluters must pay. So, people found to violate on this law will be penalized with imprisonment of 1 to 15 days and corresponding fine to 300 to 1,000. Next law that helps strengthen on this agreement is the RA 9147. So, RA 9147 is a Wildlife Resources Conservation and Protection Act of 2001. So, this Republic Act was promulgated to promote ecological balance and enhance biological diversity by establishing conservation and protection programs of wildlife species and their habitats. It also provides for a framework aimed at regulating the collection and trade of wildlife and initiation of support of scientific studies involving the preservation, and conservation of biological resources. So, RA 9147 binibigyang proteksyon ng batas na ito ang pangalaga ng mga wildlife species sa kanilang tirahan upang mapanatili ang timbang na kalagayang ecological ng bansa sa protection of wild animals. So, the declaration of this policy, isa na yung maprotekta sa mga wildlife species, no? Also to regulate the collection and trade of wildlife, to initiate or support scientific studies or the conservation of biological diversity. So, what species are covered by RA 9147? So, according to the law, all wildlife species are covered by the provisions of this law. So, regardless if they are endemic or exotic species. So, ano nga ba yung endemic species? So, endemic species are those that live in a limited area such as mountain range, lake, or island. So, isang anha ng mga endemic species nga sa Philippines ang tamaraw, Philippine eagle, and a Philippine tarsier. So, the agencies that supported on this law are the DNR, DA or the Department of Agriculture, and PC is the Palawan Council for Sustainable Development. So, actions that prohibited under this law are killing, destroying wildlife species, actions affecting the critical habitat, trading of wildlife, supporting wildlife, and collecting or hunting of wildlife. Penalties await violators in this law for actions of killing and destroying against species listed as critical, imprisonment of minimum 6 years and 1 day to 12 years, and fine of 100,000 to 1 million. So the next law that helps strengthen on this Asean Agreement for the Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources is the RA 9275. So this Republic Act aims to protect, preserve, and revive the quality of our fresh, brackish, and marine waters by promoting environmental strategies and formulating an integrated water quality management framework for the utilization and development of the country's water supply. It also provides for the creation of comprehensive management program focusing on the prevention of water pollution. RA 9275 is, we all know that water is vital for economy and public health. So this law was signed by President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo on March 2022 to 2004. So, this RA aims to protect the country's water bodies from pollution from land-based resources like industries and commercial establishment, agriculture and community, and household activities. So, nagbibigay ito ng malinaw at malawakang pamaraan para maiwasan at mabawasan ang polusyon sa tubig. Why it is important to protect our environment, our water environment? So, water, as we all know naman that water is vital for life. So, clean, fresh water is necessary for drinking and sanitation. So, providing for our crops, livestock, and industry, and creating and sustaining the ecosystems on which all life depends. So, it is important to manage the quality of water to ensure that it is safe for humans. It is safe for humans to drink it as well as for wildlife. So, besides being necessary for sustaining human life, water is used in a number of very important ways in the Philippines, such as agricultural irrigation, fisheries production, hydroelectric power generation, industrial production, and navigation. So, again, unang gana ito ng mga law, we have the RA 7550 or the Biodiversity Conservation, and the RA 8550, the Conservation of the Fisheries and Aquatic Resources, and the 8749 for the Clean Air, and the 9147 for the Wildlife Resources Conservation and Protection, and then the last we have the RA 9275 for the water, for the conservation of water. So, environmental laws play a huge part in protecting humans, animals, resources, and habitats. So without these laws, there would be no regulations concerning to pollution, contamination, hunting, or even response to disasters. So that ends our topic. Thank you for listening.